A museum is an institution which collects, conserves, communicates, and exhibits both the intangible and the tangible heritage of humanity. And what makes a museum great? I believe it is about the narrative. It is about the story that museum is telling you.
Well, actually, it started as far back as 1995. At that point of time, I was involved in a core values exercise, and I had the privilege of being able to talk with people who had actually worked with JC and KC Mahindra, who were the founders. And when they talked, they didn't talk about how many tractors were manufactured or how many jeeps hit the road. They told me stories. And that was when sort of 2 and 2 came together. And I started thinking that all those stories I had would make a wonderful narrative for a museum.
To do a museum for a company like Mahindra was like a dream come true. I knew there was so much to dig into, so much to find out about, and so much to experiment with.
If you see, the birth of Mahindra precedes the birth of our nation. And in the last 75 years, India has gone through a lot. And here's this organization which has not only survived these 75 years, it's grown. So it was important to see what is it that is making this company thrive, and then also document it in the form of this museum.
I wanted this museum to be like a cocoon and embrace us and make us feel calm, a sense of calm and a sense of wonder. That would be the perfect environment to absorb all the information and the wonderful detail in every object.
So as you enter the museum, you come into this space which we call the interspace, which is this really bright red wall with a reflected ceiling, reflected floor, and the opposite wall is also a black reflective surface. And it kind of makes you conscious but numb conscious. And that kind of clears the palette for the experience to come. So the vision for the museum was that this should not be a place which is entrenched in the past, but it is something which is documenting history as it is happening.
That's why we call it the Museum of Living History, because it won't end on the day it was inaugurated.
We've used a lot of tools, digital tools, which make this museum very easy to update. There's a flip book, for example, and there can be a story which could be added every day. Any new location Mahindra opens an office in, it could be added on the map the same day. Another thing that happens is that this museum is designed to be a museum where launches can happen. A new product, a book, an idea. In that sense, the future is part of this museum. So here's the research going on, and we have the galleries and we have the sections, but something's not tying it together. And we're conscious that there's a metaphor which needs to come in and connect the entire thing. One weekend, I remember Elsie was having the same conversation with her friend, and serendipity strikes, and he said, "Why? I think you're looking for the Nautilus." And Nautilus is a different spiral. So if you see ripples in water, they're all concentric, and if you draw a spiral out, it's growing by the same distance. But Nautilus is a logarithmic spiral. It's growing in scale in every turn. And that's the story of Mahindra. Every year, the organization is consistently growing in scale. And when we put it on the plans together, all the sections started fitting in. And when we started looking at it visually, the blaze that you see now in the museum, that started tracing the spiral. And the epicenter came to, it's almost like a rite of passage which is planted, which is called the present. And there's time on the floor, there's a beam of light, and you reach that light and you enter the future.
When we decided to go ahead with the museum, that bank of stories, if you like, became the springboard from which we went further. So Harsh and Jasleen conducted similar sort of interviews with people who at that time, in the second decade of the 21st century, were in positions of influence, were in positions of helicopter positions where they could look at the history forward and backward.
Now, while we had these stories, a parallel process was going on between Elsie and me where we were looking at artists.
We found artists from all over India and the world who were like skilled artisans, graphic storytellers, musicians, all kinds of people aided by technology to take us into the future and to create this experience, which is now the Mahindra Museum.
My piece at the Mahindra Museum is a different visualization of the Pininfarina Batista car. The visualization has been born out of the space which was given to me. It was in the corner of the museum, but I just took that to the advantage and I thought, let me just split the car in half. I'll put a mirror on the wall so that you just open out the space, There were lots of trial and error done for how many slices to keep in the car, And then it struck me that, why don't I take 76 slices? Because Mahindra has completed 76 years and each slice would basically represent 1 year of Mahindra's progress into the big giant that it has become.
I made for Mahindra Museum 4 assemblages for 4 different themes. This project gave me the opportunity to use my work method, not for telling my history, but a new history, Mahindra and Mahindra history. I saw my artworks inside the museum in photos. I couldn't believe my eyes, all the lights, the position. I was so excited about it.
I was asked by the museum committee to create a piece for the exit. Now, obviously, once you experience the entire space, there are lots of ideas that come to you, and they wanted me to come up with a way in which the people who are leaving leave with all those ideas and at the same time reflect on their past as well. The Dreamcatcher seemed like a very appropriate idea for this. So I thought of these concentric rings which made of any kind of highly reflective material would then pick up little sparkles of light and then reflect it back at you. So there is a podium, a sort of a place where they have lectures and talks. And when you're sitting there, you can actually look out of the door and see a hint of it. So it already piques your curiosity. And then as you walk towards it, you see this little disc. And if you press it just very lightly at the bottom of the thing, it starts to spin. And you get this sense of the lightness of it, even though it's made of very heavy steel.
Like every other creative endeavor, when you see your imagination, when you see your ideas coming to reality, it's an exhilarating experience. And I've been going to the museum as it was being constructed, but I never really expected it to be such a wonderful experience and so faithful to its original idea when I saw it. So all I could feel was an immense sense of gratitude to all my colleagues who have done such an amazing job in making this dream a reality.